Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a closer look at the crypto market.
Yeah, specifically diving into what was happening on one particular day, Monday, June 10th.
Right. We've got some source material here, articles, reports that really zoom in on the market's pulse then.
And they look at, how Bitcoin's price was connecting with crypto company stocks.
And also this trend that seems to be picking up steam. Companies putting Bitcoin onto their own balance sheets.
Corporate treasuries.
Exactly. So our mission really is to unpack this stuff for you, pull out the key insights from these sources about June 10th and, what it might all mean.
Okay, so let's set the scene for that Monday.
Where do we start? What's the main takeaway?
Well, the big observation pretty much across the board in these sources for the 10th is that U.S. crypto-linked stocks, they were generally up.
Okay.
And importantly, they seem to be moving pretty closely with Bitcoin itself.
All right, so let's talk Bitcoin then. What was it doing?
It climbed around 4% over that 24-hour window we're looking at, got up to $110,150.
Okay, $110.
Actually broke past that $110,000 mark earlier during the Monday Asia trading session. It was heading back towards that high point from late May, remember? Around $112,000.
Oh, right, May 22nd. And the sources give any reason for this climb, any context?
They do, yeah. They mention market jitters kind of subsiding, specifically pointing to the U.S. and China holding trade talks in the U.K. Seems like that might have, eased some nerves.
Okay, so calmer markets, Bitcoin up, and that flowed through to the stocks.
That's what the material suggests. It notes the 4 biggest U.S. crypto miners, plus other major crypto firms. They closed Monday with gains. Slight gains, but gains nonetheless.
And it carried on after hours, too.
Yeah, extended a bit into after-hours trading.
Okay, let's get specific. The sources must have named some names, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like Circle Internet Group, CRCL, they're relatively new to the NASDAQ.
Right.
They jumped a solid 7% during the main session.
7%, wow.
And then tacked on another 2.2% after hours, ended up at $117.79.
Okay, who else?
Let's see, Core Scientific, CORZ, they closed up 4.27%, and then got a little bump after the bell, like 0.87%.
Okay.
And then Miners, CleanSpark, CLSK, and Amarai Holdings, Mare, both of them climbed over 3% during the day.
And after hours?
Jumped another percent or so after hours as well.
Keeping pace?
Yeah.
And Riot
Platforms, yep. Gained 2.74% in the session, then added 1.2% after hours.
Okay. And MicroStrategy, MSTR, the big Bitcoin holder.
Them too. Gained 4.71% on the day.
Right.
And nudged up more than 1% after hours, finishing at $396.61.
So, yeah, looking at those examples, it really does seem to back up that point, doesn't it?
It really does. These specifics from the sources, they just consistently illustrate that main idea. Stocks were broadly rising pretty much in sync with Bitcoin on that Monday.
There's always a but, isn't there? The sources flagged an exception.
Yeah, there usually is. And this one's quite notable. Robinhood Markets, Hood.
Okay, Robinhood, what happened there?
Well, they're singled out in the material as the rare exception to this uptrend.
So they went down.
They did. While everyone else was sort of climbing, Robinhood actually sang almost 2%, closed at $73.40.
Huh. Why? Was it something specific to them? Because it clearly wasn't just following Bitcoin?
Exactly. And the reason given seems totally separate from crypto prices. It's about the S&P 500.
The index.
Yeah. S&P Dow Jones Indices did its quarterly rebalancing the Friday before June 7th.
Okay.
And they didn't make any changes to the S&P 500's membership.
And people thought Robinhood would get in.
That seems to be the key. The sources mentioned there was a lot of market speculation that Robinhood was, a prime candidate for inclusion.
And getting into the S&P 500 is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? Usually boosts the stock.
Huge deal. It tracks the 500 biggest U.S. public companies. And yeah, historically, inclusion gives share prices a nice lift. More demand from index funds, visibility, etc.
So no inclusion, disappointment, stock drops. Makes sense.
Seems to be the narrative presented, yeah. That disappointment sort of trumped the positive crypto sentiment for Hood that day. They did get a tiny bump after hours, just under 0.8%, but the main story was the drop.
Quite a contrast, that, especially when you look at their competitors. Did the sources mention others?
They did. eToro Group, ETOR, remember they only went public like less than a month before this?
Right, relatively new.
They surged over 10.5% on the day.
Wow.
And kept going after hours, up another 2.4% to $77.79.
Okay, that's significant. And Coinbase, coining.
Coinbase had gains too, though, more modest. Still a positive 2% gain, closing at $256.63.
So eToro and Coinbase are up, following the general crypto trend, maybe even exceeding it in eToro's case. But Robinhood is down because of this separate S&P news.
Exactly. It really highlights how specific company news like that index decision can sometimes, completely disconnect a stock's performance from the broader sector trend, even in crypto.
Yeah, definitely shows it's not just about Bitcoin's price.
Not at all. Which kind of brings us to another interesting trend these sources were flagging.
Okay. What's
So
that?
the whole thing with public companies buying Bitcoin, not as an investment product for customers, but for their own corporate treasuries.
Right, holding it on their balance sheet. We mentioned MicroStrategy earlier. They're the classic example.
They are. But the sources suggest more companies are doing this now.
And why? What's the stated motivation?
Well, according to the material, the hope seems to be that just holding Bitcoin will boost their share price, kind of riding Bitcoin's coattails from its rally earlier in the year.
Interesting strategy. Does it work? Did the sources give recent examples?
They gave a couple, yeah, and the results were, well, mixed, based on the immediate reaction.
Tell more.
Okay, so one company mentioned as like the latest jump on this trend was Bitmine Immersion Technologies, the MNR.
Bitmine Immersion, okay.
They bought 100 Bitcoin, their first time buying, specifically to hold in reserve.
All right. And did anything else happen around then?
Yeah, context matters here. This purchase came right after they did a share offering the Wednesday before, aiming to raise about $18 million.
Okay, so share offering, then Bitcoin buy announced Monday. How did the stock react Monday? Did it get that hoped-for boost?
No, actually the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, Bitmine's stock closed Monday, trading down almost 8.7%.
Down? Despite buying Bitcoin, that goes against the narrative.
It does, doesn't it? Now, it did bounce back a bit after hours, like 5.2% up to $7.25, but that initial reaction on the day of the news was negative.
Huh. Yeah, okay, so that's one data point. What was the other example?
The other one was Keeler Technology Group. Keeler, they're an energy management firm.
CLR. Got it. What did they do?
They announced on Monday they'd bought another $13 million worth of Bitcoin, so they were adding to existing holdings.
Okay, adding more. Do we know their total?
Yep. The sources specified it brought their total to 920 Bitcoin,
Wow.
acquired at an average price of $98,760 per coin.
Okay, so KLR announces they bought more Bitcoin on Monday. How did their stock do?
Keeler's shares rose 4.2% on Monday.
So KUR stock went up after their announcement, while Bitmine's went down after theirs.
Exactly. On the same day, both announcing Bitcoin buys for Treasury, but with opposite initial stock reactions, according to this material.
So just announcing you bought Bitcoin isn't a magic bullet for your stock price then, is it?
Doesn't seem like it based on these two examples anyway. It suggests, maybe other factors are at play.
Like what? The company's core business, how much they bought relative to their size. That Bitmine share offering maybe muddied the waters.
Could be any of those, right?
Yeah.
The context seems really important. Is the market seeing it as a sign of strength, a distraction, a desperate move? It's clearly not a simple equation.
Yeah, it definitely raises questions about what's really driving the share price in these situations. Is it the Bitcoin itself or how the market perceives the company making the purchase?
Good question.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. If we bring all these threads together from the sources about Juneteenth, what's the picture?
Well, we definitely saw that strong correlation, generally speaking. Bitcoin moved up, and most crypto-linked stocks followed suit. That seems clear.
Right, that was the main trend.
But then we saw Robinhood, a
Yeah.
big reminder that, company-specific news like the S&P 500 non-inclusion can totally override that crypto trend.
Yeah, a distinct factor driving its performance that day.
And then this whole corporate treasury trend, companies buying Bitcoin, hoping for a stock boost.
But the examples, Bitmine and QLR, showed really different immediate outcomes in their stock price. One down, one up.
Exactly. It wasn't uniform at all based on what we read for that day.
So considering all that, the Bitcoin correlation, the Robinhood exception, the mixed results for corporate buyers, it leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it?
It does. Maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. Beyond just the day-to-day price of Bitcoin, what do you think are really the most significant drivers behind the stock prices of these crypto-linked companies? What other factors matter most?
Yeah. Definitely something to chew on as you watch this space evolve.